Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
There's always being, in the background, this anxiety feeling like I need to do something because if I don't, I'm a failure, essentially, is what I used to think when I was younger.
A lot of young people just tell us they're stuck in their bedroom. Now that is, we know, not healthy for any person, let alone a young person.
You feel like you're a failure because you don't get 100%, or you feel like a failure because you don't get grade A or grade 9, but that doesn't matter. It's the effort and stuff you put in prior to what you're trying to achieve that matters.
And I'll be reminding you how you can make connections with mental health organisations within your community. It's Mental Health Monday. The home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome back to Mental Health Monday. Another cracking conversation on the way for you this week. It's been, what a week. Crikey O'Reilly. It has been quite the week. I got ill halfway through it, and then I managed to sort of drag myself out of my sickbed to crack on, because you know why? I was too busy. It was one of those times where I was too busy to be ill, and what I needed to do was absolutely nothing, but instead I did completely the wrong thing and forced myself to crack on because there was just so much going on last week. A couple of really important conversations over the course of the next couple of weeks as well. So we've got some cracking episodes on the way. And of course, I will always drag myself out of the sickbed to provide you with an edition of Mental Health Monday. So hopefully, even by the time you're hearing this, even if you get it on the day it gets broadcast, I'll hopefully be feeling a lot better. Today's podcast takes a look at the findings of the Prince's Trust Natwest Youth Index 2024. I'm delighted to say the Prince's Trust have been very kind in sharing the data with the Mental Health Monday podcast. It has found that this year 1 in 5 young people in the UK have missed school or work due to their mental health. 40% of 16 to 25-year-olds have experienced a mental health problem, and 21% report their mental health has got worse in the last year. Half of young people say the cost of living crisis and the pandemic has had a negative impact on their mental health, with over a third, check this, reporting they are always or often feel down or depressed. Really concerning stats from this new survey from the Prince's Trust alongside Natwest. And there's obviously a lot to talk about through it. 39% of young people no longer feel in control of their future, and 26% feel they will fail in life. How tough is that? A feeling that you're going to fail in life when you're such a young age, not even 25. Might be 16, 17, thinking you're failing at life. It's absolutely shocking that that can be the case in 2024. And what are we going to do about it? Well, there are things that we can do within workplaces and, of course, and offering young people support within educational establishments and, of course, at home as well. On the flip side, 2/3 feel determined to achieve their goals in life. A third report help with securing work experience or training would help them achieve their career ambitions. So with help, with support, young people can get the help and support that they need. Let's speak to a couple of people. We'll hear from Rachel Edwards, who does fantastic work with the Prince's Trust across the central region of England and the east of England. So we'll hear from Rachel, but first we're going to hear from Naomi. Now, Naomi's such a brilliant talker. She now has a business which goes out and about using animals to really inspire children and young people, and I'm sure many older people as well. Lizards, geckos. When I spoke to her, and you can see the video on our Facebook group, she's got all these tanks behind her, and that's her business now. That's what she goes out and about doing. She's always been really passionate about animals, but when she was growing up, she struggled with anxiety. She had issues in her life, which meant that times were tough, that things were difficult, and that she totally relates to a lot of what we've been hearing about in the survey. I'll put a link to Naomi in the podcast notes because the stuff she's doing now is really, really interesting. But we start off by talking about the fact that, yeah, of course, every young person will have their difficulties growing up. But given the fact what they've been through in the last 5 years, lockdowns, now the cost of living crisis as well, that this generation in particular has really had it tough.
I think a lot of young people are expected to know the answers to sort of big problems. And unless you've had that support network to know how to deal with certain scenarios, you don't really truly know how to respond. And, you may respond one way and then so much down the line go and reflect and go, oh my goodness, I could have done that differently. I could have done that. But realistically, who's been there for that young person to help them on that way? Because not everybody has a support network. And I think those who don't have a support network probably struggle the most because they haven't got someone to call, to text, to email, to meet up with, and have a positive influence on their mental health and how to increase them. Because you're right, there's a lot of rubbish that's got thrown to young people, no matter what age, what background, there's a lot of rubbish that's there. But I do think having support networks are probably one of the biggest things to help people, because without that influence, someone who's already feeling down and upset, maybe depressed, maybe incredibly anxious, are only going to get worse if there's not that even just small glimmer for them to feel better or do better. So yeah, I mean, it's not been easy, has it?
No, not at all. And actually, there's a stat within it: 39% of young people no longer feel in control of their future. And I can completely understand that stat. Like, absolutely, I can understand that stat 100%. And that's coming from, my experience growing up. But actually, if you did have these things where suddenly everything changed around the COVID pandemic was a great example of this one. The cost of living is kind of doing the same thing. Suddenly, I mean, suddenly you can't even have like the heating on in your house anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big thing to have to deal with that maybe a generation before maybe didn't have to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's seen as the norm, sort of, isn't it, to have a house that's got heating and somewhere safe, and people know what you want to do, because in schools or home educators, no matter sort of what education you're going through, there's this like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? How are we going to get there? And normally there's that, but because so much uncertainty was thrown when COVID hit, then obviously the cost of living. I mean, I don't necessarily have the news on, because I find it like quite negative, and I don't want that. I don't want to be thinking about things that are quite worrying. I'm aware, but not have it on in the background. But when young people come across like, the constant, this is what's happening in Britain, this is what's happening again, they sort of probably do go, what's the point then? What on earth is the point in me trying to do anything? Something might happen, I won't have a chance to do what I want to do. And then all of a sudden, you've got a lot of young, wonderful people who probably have so many hopes and dreams, and there are doors there for them to be opened, but they've lost that sort of momentum to do it, because uncertainty is being thrown their way, and they don't necessarily know how to navigate where next.
What about this for a stat? 26% of young people feel they will fail in life. I mean, that is it's upsetting, that, isn't it? When you think that 1 in 4 young people whose mindset is, well, I'm probably going to fail. I mean, that's the sort of stuff that stops you getting out of bed in the morning. It stops you caring. It stops you thinking about how you can proactively engage with your community. That's such a huge number, isn't it? To feel that like life's passed them by and they've already lost the game.
Yeah, I think it's too high a number, isn't it? It's very sad and upsetting. I've got 2 young children, and they're very young, 6 and nearly 3. And if I was to hear them say that, it'd break my heart. As part of what I do, I work in lots of schools, whether it's primary, secondaries, colleges, lots of different backgrounds. And I had a chat with a young girl recently who is studying for a qualification, and she said those exact words to me. She said, I'm going to fail. I don't even know why I'm here. I don't want to do this when I leave school. So I sat down with her and I said, do you know what? Forget about the exam at the end of this. Forget about everything that's going in your head right now. We're going to talk about the transferable skills you're going to get from this, because you're not going to fail. I said, you've actually got quite a good head of knowledge in there. So let's pull out what you know and how it can really tie in to what you want to do when you're older. And we did. And I've never seen her work so hard in each class since, because that pressure of, you need to do this for this exam, and all that sort of thing, that's gone. She doesn't want that. She wants to know what she can do for her job. And like I say, after that chat, you just saw like that little glimmer. I know when I was younger, I was quite a quiet kid, believe it or not. I was I'm still a nerd. But quite often there was some people who would say, you won't amount to anything. You're not capable of doing anything. And I understand like that effect it can have on someone from a young age. For me, it upset me massively. It did destroy confidence to a certain extent, but it also lit a fire in my belly to prove people wrong that, do you know what, if you want to do something, you can do it, and there are certain things. I hate the word fail. I don't like it at all. Again, it's one of those words where I'm like, I don't like that. And it's a word where I think that's put onto so many things that you feel like you're a failure because you don't get 100%, or you feel like a failure because you don't get, grade A or grade 9. It is now, isn't it? It's numbers now, not letters, or whatever it may be. But that doesn't matter. It's the effort and stuff you put in prior to what you're trying to achieve that matters. You know, I mean, I've got 2 degrees. You know, I've worked hard on what I do, and the grades, you know, are important when you get your certificate and stuff. But when you take that to one side and you look at all the little bits that young people are doing in their day-to-day lives and what they can do, I think that focus is so important than the word fail. And I think as soon as young kids hear that word, they go, I've not got the energy to do this. I'm only going to fail anyway.
I think that's huge, isn't it? No, I mean, let's just say nobody wants to go on an aeroplane with a pilot who failed their pilot's exam, and no one wants a heart surgery with a heart surgeon who failed their heart surgery exam.
Yeah.
But actually, there's a different thing, isn't there, about the experience away from the professional environment. It's about learning communication skills, human contact skills, the ability to be confident to approach somebody, to do all of those things that actually sometimes that pass and fail culture runs completely roughshod over. That actually we say to people, you either did it or you didn't do it. Whereas actually, well, let's look at the progression. Let's look at the fact that you're growing as a human being and will continue to grow as a human being way beyond the walls of school or your first job or university or whatever that would be. We never really have that. We almost have this like, well, you're 16 now you're 18, right? You're out the door. Oh, what's the matter? You can't cope with life. Well, that must be your problem.
Yeah.
It's a progression we've got to be so much more aware of, haven't we?
Oh, definitely. Like I say, I work with lots of different ages, and recently I'm out and about with lots of teenagers, you know, young people, and I run my own clubs, and there was children as young as 8 years old who really struggled with their confidence, with their self-esteem, with their, you know, ability to sort of overcome little things. I'm a big believer in, I call them little wins. So giving people like just that little bit of something to give them that internal confidence boost to know that they can go do something next time. And that makes a difference. You don't have to go whole hog. You know, you don't have to go, well, I'm going to go from never speaking to anyone in front of 100 people to do a presentation, but just grasping little wins and even writing it down, making a note of it, getting a picture, getting a memory. And I think progression is important. Like you say, you know, it's, you're this age, now you do this. You're this age, now you do that. You're that age, now you do that. But really, life is quite short. You know, there's lots of things I've gone through that are difficult that's taught me that life's quite short. And it is about grasping the happy moments, the little wins, the ones that make you feel passionate, happy, determined, motivated, and surrounding yourself with people who give you that boost as well. But progression can be difficult.
What can I ask? What are those moments that you draw on when you're speaking to young people about their lack of engagement in something or that lack of confidence? What are those things that you touch on from your own life that kind of go, look, I've gone through this. I've literally sat in the seat that you're sat in, but this is how I got to where I got to.
So I like I say, I was a very quiet child. I was very different. Nerd, you know, any given opportunity, I'd speak about animals, so I chose the right business. And I, from a young age, didn't really have a lot of confidence to speak to people or say things. But then when, say I was asked a question by a teacher and I got the answer right, or they really engaged with me, I was like, oh my goodness, they're listening to me. And it gave me that little tiny bit of confidence at a young age to go, oh, I'm going to go speak to that person again and build up, you know, a relationship. Then as I got older, you know, I was still quite quiet growing up. I didn't really know how to blend in at school, essentially. You know, I wasn't popular by any means. And I had this vision in my head, animals is my thing. So again, found it quite difficult when it comes to talking about other subjects. I wasn't really up to date with what was on the telly and that sort of thing. And friends would be talking about it and I'd be like, I saw a bird in my garden. And I'd just change it. I wouldn't have a clue what they were talking about. And then but what I did learn was that sometimes you don't need to necessarily know what they're talking about. So I wasn't aware of the TV or whatever, but I'd say to them like, so what was in it? What was about it? And just learn how to ask questions to engage a different way. Other things that I've drawn and is a big thing for me is anxiety. So pretty much my whole life has always been, you know, in the background or at the forefront. this anxiety feeling like I need to do something because if I don't, I'm a failure, essentially, is what I used to think when I was younger. Or if I sit down, I'm lazy. And if I do this, I'm not this or whatever. And I mean, I'm older now, but even now I still have to tell myself, you know, like to think a different way. There's horrible things that I've gone through. There's things that are very real life that aren't necessarily talked about. So, you know, close family members attempting to really hurt themselves. There's been facing homelessness. There's been unexpected deaths in the family. There's been lots of things that, again, you see out and about, and until you live it, you really don't know how to react to it. One of the biggest things I've gone through is I had a mental breakdown when I was younger, about 10 years ago it'd be now. And I was in a world then where I didn't know how to react to certain situations. I found myself, you know, really not understanding certain things and not necessarily being liked for who I was, essentially. And all these things accumulate together, and I had a mental breakdown. I know if you asked me about that so many years ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, I missed a few days at work, I was fine, I was back on it, you know. Oh yeah, I missed that, I had a bad day, but I'm back on it. And I'd brush it off. But more than ever, I realised, especially after working with the younger generation, they need to hear it, because a lot of them go through very similar things. They have a lot of things in their backgrounds that are not nice at all. And quite often, you know, when you're in a teaching position or they look up to you as, you know, someone that they go to, if they just say, oh no, you can do this, but there's not sort of like any sustenance behind it, they just go, oh, they're just saying the same words to me over and over again. But if you can show, you know what, I've been through this and it's a pile of rubbish, you're not going to like it. You've got to really ride the emotions and figure out who you are as a person, how to deal with it, how to ignore it next time or whatever it is, and how to deal with things thrown your way that are unexpected or uncertain. You know, that's incredibly important to learn, but it comes with going through things. And like I say, that conversation with that lovely student who just worried about the word fail, and then we flipped it on its head and was like, no, worry about this. And now there's a different mindset just from that one little conversation, you know, giving that one person a little glimmer, a little win, that they know they don't need to worry about the pressures that face young people, that they hear about all the time. You know, they can focus on other things, just who they are as a person, like you say, growing as a person. That's it's so important to be like that.
I think thanks for being so honest as well about your story there, Naomi. Really appreciate that, and I think people listening will appreciate your honesty too. One of the things that strikes me as well, that the survey here is 16 to 25, and what this doesn't do is go, oh well, when you leave school, 16, everything will be different. When you leave college, it's 18, everything will be different. Yeah. I mean, this was the lesson that I learned in life more than anything, is that there's those sort of either cliff edges or whichever, those barriers that you think are, I'll be all right when I'm like this, they don't ever really come. All those milestones, they come and they arrive, but then they go. But it's still you, and it's still the world. And actually, when you move into adulthood, the situations you're dealing with are just as severe. You deal with them slightly differently because, but in many ways, the stakes are higher around, you know, housing and accommodation and looking after other children and so on and so forth. Yeah. So actually, those lessons that you learn at that young age, you've got to be equipped with them, because the last thing you want to be able to do is get these young people into adulthood and suddenly find that they're also ill-equipped to deal with that as well. And that's about engagement, and it's about being able to sort of embrace that persistence, if you like. And that resilience is so crucial. We've got to be teaching that at a young age, or teaching people how to find it at a young age. Yeah. Because goodness knows you are going to need it when you're an adult as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Resilience, something I was speaking about recently, actually, resilience. And I noticed a group of young people I was working with give up so quickly. They just gave up on the first step doing an activity. And I was like, what's going on here? Like, what? Why are you giving up? Like, you've not even started. We've not even got a word down. Like, and they're like, oh, well, I just don't know. I was like, well, let's grab what you do know, because I know you know things. You know, you talk to me about it. We're just getting it down on paper or whatever. Excuse me. And the resilience is so important, especially from a young age. You know, learning that life can be very difficult. You know, you don't have to say the ins and outs to really young kids or young people, but sort of equipping them with, well, if this scenario was to happen, you know, these are places you can go, people you can speak to, building up your resilience and your sort of protection as well is important. I know when COVID hit, my eldest come out of nursery. He was only young at that point. He was 3 years old, and very, very, very young age. And we seen a difference in him. He was quieter. He was more reserved when it got back to being social again. He lost every ounce of confidence he had, as much as we were instilling it. It was us he was seeing every day and stuff. He lost that. He wouldn't walk through doors to go to places. He wouldn't go speak to new people. And it's taken up until the last year and a half, really, for him to just be this confident little boy that we knew he was. But even at that age, as much as, we were teaching him, it was difficult to see him go from this really bubbly boy to like, I don't really want to do anything. And we're like, no, we're going out for a walk. Like, come on, let's do this. And the same with my daughter now. But even as young as that, and then all the way up to teenagers, young adults, resilience plays a big part. But it's one of those things, isn't it, where you can teach so many different tools, but it's got to come from within as well. You've got to have someone help you switch that switch to go, right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to build it up myself, because you can't make anyone do what they want to do, or how they feel. But it's very important to have that little bit of encouragement to help someone just start their first block of being resilient.
Naomi, I'm going to bring Rachel Edwards into the conversation now. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story with us. We'll put a link to the work that Naomi does in the podcast notes. Rachel, the Prince's Trust obviously go out of their way to make sure that this youth index tells a story, and actually overall the stories that young people's mental health is getting worse. That actually there's negative things happening, and actually in certain areas that's growing. So the situation is getting worse for young people in their mental health, and that must be concerning for you.
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I think we have firsthand as an organisation seen kind of, the mental health crisis, I guess that you could say we're in now, the pandemic, but particularly young people are highlighting the cost of living crisis, particularly the concerns and worries with money, just things like skipping meals because they can't obviously afford, or having to make decisions, as we said, between do they eat, do they put their heating on, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess it is, it is concerning for us. And we kind of, as I said, hear that firsthand from young people in terms of how it's having a negative impact on their well-being. But I think particularly that kind of relationship for us in terms of having poor mental health and how that impacts kind of the ability to engage in education, even like looking for work. So filling out an application form, having the confidence, to go for an interview. Actually, maybe when they find a job and they're struggling with their mental health, are they going to get the support that they need from an employee, or scared to even say to their employee in case that's going to have a negative impact? And then kind of the impact that then has on their aspirations for the future. So I think, for us as an organisation particularly, it's that kind of negative impact that mental health has on young people, kind of reaching their potential really, and having those aspirations for the future. It's that cycle for us that they go hand in hand, really.
And that's really important to point out, because of course when we look at this looks like data and it's numbers, but actually what you've touched on there is actually if there are happiness in work, education, qualifications and money at an all-time low, there is a human response to that. So there is action that a young person will or will not take as a result of feeling like that. And that's why it's so important, isn't it, to gauge this, so that when you interact with these young people, don't just know how they're feeling, but actually know how those feelings will change the way that they will walk forward in the future. Decisions they'll make on a job, decisions they'll make on life, decisions they'll make on whatever is coming their way.
Absolutely. And I think that is the thing for us in terms of, I guess for us as an organisation, is it's about putting that right support in and those right opportunities for young people. And kind of in all of our work that we do, look, we're not a a mental health charity. But for us as an organisation, it's really important as we deliver our programmes that we embed that confidence building, we embed those softer skills, kind of the things that Naomi talked about, resilience. Do you know what I mean? I'm not even sure that was a word when I was kind of younger, but how we build that resilience in young people and build their confidence and self-esteem, because we know that building those softer skills and giving that actual practical support can really help young people when they are looking for opportunities. They are going for interviews, or if they are in work, how do they have that conversation if they're struggling, whether that be with their peers or whether that be with their manager, and actually just kind of like how they deal with that day to day in terms of reaching their goals and potential. And I think just in terms of with Naomi, I think what's great is kind of how we know that actually when you see a young person has started a business or they've got a job, the difference that can make, and that not just kind of, with their health and their well-being, but just giving them that kind of stability that they need to actually, for us, do some of the basics and not worry. I think that's the sad thing about this, is being able to do the actual, the basics in life, like, buy themselves food, put a bit of heating on, all the things I think that we take for granted, really. So I think, it's that practical support and that practical opportunities. It's about doing positive things to address this crisis that we're currently in.
And the survey finds actually that young people respond to that, don't they? If they think that somebody's got their back, if they think that they're going to get support, if they know that they've got that, actually the numbers, instead of it being the 1 in, the 1 in 5s, it becomes the 3 in 5s and the 4 in 5s who hope that they. So actually, that idea of a support network, or even if it's not like a Prince's Trust with a capital P and a capital T, it's like, even it's just like society's got their back, or their family've got their back, or their educational establishment has got, that actually people feel like they're supported. They don't feel like they're just trying to deal with it on their own. And young people do respond to that, and the survey proves it.
Absolutely. And look, for young people, they're 4 times more likely to be out of work and not engage in anything than the rest of the working population. Do you know what I mean? So we know this is a societal issue, and we also know that everybody's got to come together to address this. But I think that is really key, Mick, in the sense of, do you know what I mean? Actually, if they can see there are willing people that want to help them and there's opportunities out there, then actually, and also how you deal with some of these things, because actually it doesn't necessarily mean those challenges are going to go away, but it gives them the confidence and the ability to be able to talk about them. Because as we've seen from the pandemic, and we certainly see from young people, a lot of young people just tell us they're stuck in their bedroom. Now that is, we know, not healthy for any person, let alone a young person at a time when they should be, thriving in life, really. So I think if, we can give them the right support and we give them the right opportunities, we know at the Trust the difference that can make. And I think, as we've seen today, Mick, you're joined by somebody that's kind of had that support, and look at the difference it's made to Naomi's life.
Absolutely.
Really.
Yeah. Can I talk about, and this will be one of the challenges that you guys are facing. In the survey, more than a third of young people are worried that their mental health will stop them achieving their career ambitions, with 2 in 5 saying that worrying about achieving these goals has made their own mental health worse. That is a vicious cycle, that, isn't it? That's somebody whose mental health gets to a point where they think, I'm really struggling, and then starts making decisions about their future, but then feels like they can't make those decisions because their mental health is struggling so much. That is when, it kind of, that's like crunch time, isn't it? That is the cycle that we have to break, because actually that's the thing then that rolls these problems into the future, that rolls it into your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and beyond. That cycle's got to be broken, and that's a big ask, isn't it?
It is, but I think, as we've said, it's back to actually organisations like ourselves coming together with employers, and other charities and organisations to actually, give those that support and those opportunities, have those conversations. Do you know what I mean? Allow young people to have those conversations, meet other young people, so they know they're not alone. That's the other biggest thing for young people. If they're stuck in a bedroom, and they're not talking about this, that's just going to build and build and build. So as I said, we know that actually, because our programs are so practical, that it can give them that space to actually kind of talk about that, and talk about, like you've just said, why do young people feel they're not going to achieve their goals? What is stopping them? Let's look at that and what that means day to day, and then we can put in a package, of help and support to move that young person forward. And I think, as Naomi said, like for me, the smallest wins are the biggest thing, because it might not be about gaining the biggest qualification or whatever, but it might be kind of like, you turned up today, you attended today, look what you completed today, you engaged with somebody else. So it's that they can see those kind of softer skills that they're building, so that they can kind of help those to, take their goals, take their plan forward, really.
But for anyone who's sort of hearing this survey today and they're thinking, young people, it's such a bleak picture. Let's just try and address that slightly. You'll see on a daily basis, Rachel, I'm sure, moments that make your heart absolutely sing, that make you fill with joy about how fantastic young people are, the opportunities that they can offer, and the difference that they can bring to workplaces or educational establishments or whatever. Just give us a sense of how you feel about young people.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've worked for the Trust for 12 years, Mick, and I still get up every day because every young person should have the chance to succeed. I mean, just sat here today listening to Naomi for 10 minutes is going to spring me in my step for the weekend, because, listening to her story and knowing that, I meet Naomi's all the time. Do you know what I mean? And actually just knowing where some of these young people have been, and actually knowing that actually if individuals and organisations put the right support in, they put the right opportunities, we can, as it says, change young people's lives, because they are our future. And young people make me excited because they're a different generation. They've got some great ideas, some great qualities, some great skill sets. I do feel excited, but I think it's really key that actually, as we've seen with Naomi today, if you put the right support in place, you give young people the right opportunities, they can thrive. So come on, if we all work together, I think, definitely, as I said, we can help young people to realise the potential and to succeed in life. And young people want to, that's what they tell us, but they need the practical support to do that.
Absolutely. Rachel, thank you so much for your time. Rachel from the Prince's Trust. Naomi as well. We'll put a link to Naomi and the work she does actually now in the animal world. For people who can't see the conversation, there's tanks and there's lizards and geckos and all sorts crawling behind her, but it's a fascinating insight. We'll put a link to Naomi and the work she does in the podcast notes. And thank you both for joining us on this week's Mental Health Monday.
Thank you very much for having me. I've had an amazing time, and it's really nice to share about young people. They have a lot of ideas. Yeah, just grasp it. Life's got enough to worry about.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999. Thanks for downloading the podcast this week. We'll be back next week with more Mental Health Monday.